So former President Barack Obama returned to the White House for the first time since he left for an event with Joe Biden. And I got a couple clips here for you. One of them is the end zone dance and the bragging that Obama does over a specific issue, which rubbed me the wrong way for reasons I'll explain in a little bit. But before I get to that, let's have some fun here because Obama absolutely roasted Biden to his face. Take a look.
Thank you, everybody. Have a seat. Have a seat. Thank you. Vice President Biden, Vice President. That was a joke. That was all set up.
Low-key, there was like a 4% chance there was going to be a little Will Smith slap action there. Now, look, he actually took it really well. I'm happy he took that well. And Obama says they staged that beforehand. It was genuinely a good joke. But for those of you who are unfamiliar and why this is a soft spot, why this is touching a nerve, there was a lot of chatter at the time behind the scenes that Joe Biden was genuinely looked down upon by Obama, by Hillary Clinton, by a variety of people in the administration because they viewed themselves as like the highly educated liberal elites, basically, and that Joe Biden is an old school backslapping politician. Like, let's get in a smoke-filled back room and make a deal with the Republicans and sit down and chat it up. And, you know, he's a guy, he's a handshaker, he's a backslapper. He's from a different era of politics. And there was a lot of reporting at the time that you got the sense Obama definitely preferred Hillary Clinton to succeed him. And that didn't happen because Hillary has the charisma of a dirty diaper. And obviously there's a bunch of terrible stuff in her past, a bunch of terrible stuff in Biden's past too, and terrible policy decisions, etc. But Joe Biden was picked because as VP by Obama because Obama knew he might struggle with like older or middle-aged working class white people who are skeptical of a black dude. And so Biden was a pick specifically to hold down that demographic. It was purely political, you know, and I mean, almost every VP choice is purely political. Trump picked Pence because he thought I might struggle with evangelical Christians because I'm Donald Trump and look at me and what my lifestyle has been. Kamala Harris was picked because, you know, we're in the era of identity politics trying to catch up to where it should have been a long time ago. We probably should have had a female president a long time ago. We should have had, you know, presidents of different races a long time ago. So it was time for a black woman to be picked. So keep it real. In many respects, she was largely picked because she's a black woman. Excuse me. She definitely wasn't picked because of, you know, her popularity because she didn't have any. She had to drop out before Iowa in the race. So Biden was picked by Obama in 2008 for very cynical, purely political reasons. And even though they've done a fantastic job putting on that PR face and presenting to the world the picture they want to present to the world, Obama and a lot of the, you know, close staffers kind of looked down on Biden and kind of thought of him as this ancient relic. So for him to make that joke is like, look here, bitch, you're always going to be the VP in my eyes. Oh, but again, look, he handled that well. There's another cringe video going around of Biden being in the room after the speech, and you have Biden sort of aimlessly wandering around looking lost, and nobody wants to talk to him. And then you got Obama shaking everybody's hand, smiling, giggling, engaged in conversation. And, you know, the right is making a huge deal of that because it just looks like sad for Biden. But low-key, I don't know who wouldn't, you know, relate to Biden on that shit because we've all been to a party at one point or another in our lifetimes when we feel like the odd person out. It's very stark in this sense because Biden truly is like wandering and nobody wants to talk to him, even though he's the president of the United States. But I don't hold anything against him for that. I think that's actually kind of relatable, if you ask me. Anyway, so that's the fun part. Now let's get to the serious part of the story. So the whole point of this event is to sort of do an end zone dance over Obamacare. They want to talk about Obamacare and how many lives they improved and talk about healthcare, talk about how hard it was to get it through, et cetera, et cetera. And they're making some minor tweaks to it moving forward, which is supposed to be beneficial for people. And so then Obama delivers this portion of the speech. Let's watch and then I'll react.
But despite great odds, Joe and I were determined. Because we'd met too many people on the campaign trail who'd shared their stories. And our own families had been touched by illness. And as I said to our dear friend Harry Reid, who is missed, wished he was here today, because he took great pride in what we did. I intended to get health care passed, even if it cost me re-election, which for a while looked like it might. But for all of us, for Joe, for Harry, for Nancy Pelosi, for others, the ACA was an example of why you run for office in the first place, why all of you sign up for doing jobs that pay you less than you could make someplace else, why you're away from home sometimes and you miss some soccer practices or some dance recitals. Because we're not supposed to do this just to occupy a seat or to hang on to power. But we're supposed to do this because it's making a difference in the lives of the people who sent us here. And because of so many people, including a lot of people who are here today, made enormous sacrifices. Because members of Congress took courageous votes, including some who knew that their vote would likely cost them their seat. Because of the incredible leadership of Nancy and Harry, we got the ACA across the finish line together.
So a quick side point on style. You can see how he won the presidency twice. You can see how he's a great speaker. Even though he's speaking in a professorial way and in kind of a slow way, he still has an ability to connect with the audience that, Biden may have had in the past, but he's lost it with old age. Trump was actually a communicator that worked in his own respect because he always seems like he's so off the cuff, which people assume feels like authenticity. But you can see here why Obama won the White House twice, because he's just good at this politician stuff. Now that's the style point. The substance point is this. Only the Democrats can get up there and brag about a reform that still leaves 27.5 million people uninsured. I looked up the number last night to make sure I got it right, because the number I had read previously was 30 million people are still uninsured in this country. Turns out the exact number as of 2022 is 27.5 million. I don't know why you're bragging. Look, I get the idea that, hey, sometimes you got to take a tiny step forward and you can't take a great leap forward, and there's all these institutional barriers in the way, et cetera, et cetera. But the fact of the matter is, and we've known this for years, you had a supermajority at the time, a supermajority. Democrats could have gotten anything that they wanted through. Supermajority. And they simply did not get through, forget Medicare for all. They didn't even get through a public option. And then now in retrospect, you're going to try to put lipstick on the pig of a Republican healthcare reform and act like, man, we sure did a great job, didn't we? Are you kidding me? First of all, the Republicans, shiv this thing in the side 47 ways to Sunday and undermine it and undercut it and found a way to weaken it. So if a test of the law is its longevity, well, then it's failing miserably on that front. Now, you might say, Kyle, don't blame them for that. What are you going to do? It's the Republicans. But you have to understand something. And this is like the brilliance of Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, etc. When you have programs that are more universal in nature, it is so hard to undercut them and undermine them and succeed on that front because it becomes political suicide to do it. And so if you don't go big and bold and universal, well, then you're opening the door for them to destroy it. And so even though you might say, well, blame the Republicans for that, I do. They have agency and they were doing the terrible things on their own. You also got to understand there's ways to craft these policies and these programs that make them more successful in the long term. And they simply didn't do that. So again, we have a country where 27.5 million people are uninsured right now. There's still tens of thousands of people who die because they don't have basic health care. And they're doing an event bragging about the healthcare reform that they did. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? There was a report that came out, I believe it was Public Citizen, which found that because we don't have universal health care, 330,000 people, I believe it was, we could have saved 330,000 lives during the COVID pandemic if we only had universal health care. That policy change alone would have saved 330,000 lives. Now, how do they determine that? I don't know exactly how they did that study and how they came up with that number, but the general idea is the people who don't have insurance and don't have enough money in the bank where they feel like I can just go to the hospital and everything will be taken care of and I won't go bankrupt. A lot of people didn't go get treatment because they feel like I'm not insured and I can't really afford it. And then you have people who maybe went way too late because they were like, look, I can't afford it. And then when it got to the point where they were struggling to breathe and like, I have to go to the hospital, by the time they got in there, it was too late. If they had gone 4 days earlier or something, because they had insurance, well, then their life maybe would have been saved by remdesivir or whatever the other treatments are that they were using. So, you can't, to brag with this system, with this abysmal system, look, I don't want to be an unnuanced douche here, okay? Because the fact of the matter is there were many provisions of Obamacare that they deserve genuine credit for passing. You know, insurance companies could no longer say, you have a pre-existing condition, so we're not going to cover you. Kids were able to stay on their parents' healthcare rolls until they were like, 21 or 25 or something like that. You can point to a number of things that are genuinely good. I think the Medicaid expansion was one of the best parts of it because that was an expansion covering more people with the universal healthcare that we have for people who are on the lower rung of the economic ladder, okay? So there were provisions that were great, but the fact of the matter is the heart of the bill came from the Heritage Foundation, which is a right-wing think tank. The idea was, I'm going to force most Americans to buy health insurance on the private market using the for-profit insurance companies. We're going to force you to do that. So it gives, the insurance companies like a captive audience, if you will. And that's one of the reasons why this ultimately passed, because it was good for the bottom line of the health insurance companies. And so, look, I'm old school. I'm of the belief that if the government's going to tell you, you have to have X, Y, and Z, okay, bitch, provide it. I guess you're going to have to provide that. Can't force me to buy some shit on the private market, but they do. And that's what they did. And this is why it's a plan that was originally supported by Chuck Grassley and Mitt Romney. Again, this was the right-wing answer to single-payer healthcare in the 1990s. And the Democrats went from single-payer healthcare to public option, and then all the way to, we're just going to do your idea, the Republicans. And of course, the Republicans are so insane and so obstructionist that they just pivoted to, our healthcare position is do absolutely nothing. I mean, for real, that was their answer. Their response was like, everything's good the way it is now. We don't want to give a single extra person health insurance. We don't want to reform the system at all. We still want to let health insurance companies kick people off for pre-existing conditions. So their position was absolutely ludicrous. The status quo was beautiful, was their position. And the Democratic position became the Republican position. And now they're bragging about it. Guys, this is not something to brag about. Now, I will say, the point of this event was not just to brag about Obamacare, which is, again, astonishing to me that they would do this. It was also to say, well, we're announcing some changes. And the changes are going to get potentially millions more people healthcare. And the changes are, from what I read about it, it seems like they're closing some family loophole that was there. So some families were unable to get Obamacare. And they're closing that loophole, so it's going to cover more people who are part of families. Something along those lines. Maybe there's one or two other tweaks as well. And they're bragging about that. And, forgive me for wanting a better system and wanting better politicians. But to me, if you're going to do this event, at the end of it, you got to announce an executive order that's like, where using the emergency powers that are delegated to us through Obamacare to expand universal coverage, using the emergency provision that's in, there was a town in Montana, I think it was. We covered the story on the show. There was a great More Perfect Union piece on it. There's a town in like Montana that was poisoned. And under Obamacare, they allowed that town to basically have a version of Medicare for all. Like everybody's covered there. They were impacted by this. And so under Obamacare, there's a provision like in emergency situations, you could just give people health care using Medicare. And because we have a pandemic, because we have so many people who died as a result of it, because it's still ripping through the country, even though, it went down for a while, but now it looks like it's ticking back up with a new subvariant, if you will. You could just announce, President Biden signing an executive order to give everybody impacted by COVID health care. And really, you can make a legal argument, and David Dayen of the American Prospect has a great article about this, and he's talked quite a bit about it. You can make an argument that you can use this provision in Obamacare to just give everybody health care in the country. Now, you say, hey, maybe that'll get slapped down in court. We have pretty right-wing courts right now. To which I respond, even if that's true, make them do it. Make the Republicans come out against giving everybody health care, because they will, and then make the courts slap it down. But if you're the one who goes out there and says, we're going to give everybody health care, and we have the authority to do it, and here's the statute, here's the provision, here's what the executive order says, here's how it's going to function, well, that's some gangster shit. That's some FDR-style shit. That's some, I'm going to do the right thing, and then if you're against it, okay, but at least I did the right thing over here. So there is no executive order at the end of this which does that. It's just like, minor tweaks to Obamacare to make it slightly better, which again is better than nothing, but, this should be the Republican position, and the Democratic position should be not one person uncovered. Not one. But there's 27.5 million. So it's the low bar that drives me crazy, man. It really is. It's the low bar. It's the half measures on top of half measures within the half measures, and then acting like that's revolutionary. No, it's not. You gave the insurance companies, for-profit insurance companies, even more power under the system. I'm not okay with that. I'm not okay with that at all. And they act like that's the best we could have done. It really isn't. If Obama played the FDR game and the LBJ game, and he twisted arms, and he knew who to kill with kindness and who to play hardball with, they absolutely could have gotten at least enough votes for a public option. And he didn't. And it's the same thing that happened with Biden and Build Back Better. If it was just Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin in the way, you got dirt on both of them. You could have killed them with kindness to see if that worked, and then when it didn't work, okay, you got all sorts of ammunition to use. You do. They're both criminals. The Department of Justice should have been investigating them, should have been investigating Joe Manchin's family for being involved in price gouging with Big Pharma, which they are, and we have emails proving that. Could have made him an offer he can't refuse, but they didn't do it. And so here we are. Anyway, there you have it. Obama returns to the White House, brags about his half-measure ass healthcare law, and roasts Biden along the way. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You want to.